everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf. I'm Naomi and here we are with a Shakespeare book tag. It was created by Wild Book Garden about a year and a half ago, so it's an older tag, but I found it. I saw some people do it in the past and I really wanted to do it, especially for Shake Tube, which is happening in the month of September. So here we go. I'm going to be reading out the questions. There are 13, I believe, or 11 actually, because one for each of Shakespeare's plays. So the first prompt is for the play A Much Ado About Nothing, and it is for your favorite bickering couple who you know love each other, but they always fight. And so, I mean, I had a few choices, but I really kept coming back to Lizzie and Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. Now, I know Lizzie doesn't love him in the beginning, but they get there. And on top of that, I was like, even better. I mean, I remember reading Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and I just couldn't stop laughing at their dialogue. They bickered non-stop. Personally, I love this book. It's the one, side note into my personality, it's the funniest book I've ever read. It made me laugh out loud so much more than comedy books. But yeah, so this one I thought was great. It's Pride and Prejudice, throw in some zombies. I'm not a horror reader person, but I really thought it was great. Everyone who I've recommended it to has loved it, so you should pick it up if you haven't read it yet and you want a Jane Austen retelling. So yeah, bickering couple, Lizzie and Darcy, what else can you say? So the next prompt is for Measure for Measure, which is to read describe a book that is very hard to describe in plot. And so for that one, I mean, not many people describe it, and that's Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. There's a few other books, but I'm like, this one I feel like is my hardest one to describe because it's a boy whose mother has cancer and then about a monster who visits him. And like, it's just so much more deep. It just goes deeper than that in so many ways, but I can't explain it without giving away any more of the plot. So, you know, it's a hard one to explain. I really recommended it. I cried the whole time basically, well, at least the second half. So yeah, I find this one hard to explain to other people. The next prompt is for A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is for a book that involves fairies or elves. And for me, I don't read a lot of books with fairies or elves since I don't read a lot of fantasy. But I just started rereading, or reading I guess for the first time, Lord of the Rings, since I'd never actually read the full series before. But I reread The Hobbit and fell in love. So this one has elves. It's great. What else can you say? It's The Hobbit. So Middle Earth is awesome. So I'm excited to continue reading in Lord of the Rings. The next play is Hamlet, and that's for an underutilized female character. Now, if you've watched Hamlet or read Hamlet, you know who that is. Anyways, I was thinking about this, and I think that this Agatha Christie is really missing Miss Marple, since she's the detective of it, essentially. This is the 450 from Paddington. I still really loved this, like the whole twist and the ending. It's not her best Miss Marple book, in my opinion, but I feel like the problem was that there was no Miss Marple, really. It follows, like, Miss Marple basically tells another young woman to go and be a housekeeper and then find out all of the details of the mystery in this other town. And so, like, that's how it works. So Miss Marple isn't there, it's this girl Lucy, I want to say. I can't remember her name exactly. It's not in the back because they only have 3 paragraphs on these old mass market paperback editions. But yeah, so like Lucy goes and she's basically the heroine of the book, even though it's a Miss Marple mystery. So I feel like Miss Marple is severely lacking in this particular edition. I do love how she still solves it, but you feel her absence a lot in my opinion. The next prompt is his sonnets, Shakespeare sonnets, and it's to mention your favorite poem. Now, I don't read a lot of poetry. I used to read when I was like a preteen and a teenager, and I still actually have my old poetry book that I read because I was homeschooled, so I was reading this for part of my literature courses, and I remember loving this. That's why I've kept it for over 10 years. So I do want to reread it over the course of this coming year. I think in 2020 I want to reread this book, maybe a poem a day kind of thing. But I don't have a favorite poem. It's been so long since I've read poetry. I used to write poetry myself in some small ways, and now I feel like I just fell out of poetry, and now I want to fall back into it. So instead of a favorite poem, a favorite poetry book. The next prompt is for Richard III. So a protagonist who will do whatever he needs to do. He'll go to any length. And I can't think of anyone more appropriate on my shelves than the Count from The Count of Monte Cristo, because of what he goes to are extreme lengths for anything. So if you've read this book, and it's a chunker, but it's worth it, and it's quite a revenge story of the Count just never giving up and realizing the consequences at the end of what he had done to so many people. So the next prompt is for Antony and Cleopatra, which is your favorite buzzword, catchphrase, trope in a book that has never been perfected. And I have a few that I have loved and found like, oh, that was the perfect form of it. And I have not yet found, and I haven't read this book yet, so don't take it as this book didn't live up to it, but I have not yet found a great interpretation of people's lives, I feel like, that I'm not offended by if they are fiction. So this is Becoming Mrs. Lewis by Patty Callahan, and it's about C.S. Lewis, also known as Jack, and how he and his wife met, I believe. I have not read it. I want to read it, but I feel like anytime I pick up a book about someone's life that's fictionalized, I look at that and I think, what if someone's offended in their life because of that? So I hope that this one lives up to my idea for historical figures. And I'm really hoping it is amazing, but it's also something where I walk into hesitantly, knowing that it's fiction, so it's not going to be all true, obviously, but it's also something that could strongly offend someone who's part of that family. And so I always try to find that balance, and it's a little hard sometimes. The next one is Titus Andronicus. I think I'm saying that right. A book by a lesser known book by an author that you think people should read. So for that one, I actually am picking Annie Barrows from the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society duo, as she wrote The Truth According to Us. I have not finished it. I am in the middle of it, so you can take this with a grain of salt if you like. But this is so reminiscent of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society that if you loved that book, you should at least pick this book up. There are some letters in here, but it's not told solely in that format. And it is about this family at the end of the 30s who are basically, they used to be king and queen of the small town, like this family, and now they have someone living with them who is trying to write the history of the town, and they're basically ostracized. This town who's taking in boarders now. So, this whole family's taking in boarders now. It's really funny, a great cast of women and men, and I am intrigued to finish it. So if you like Guernsey Literary Potato Pie Society, you should check this one out too. So for the next question, I'm going to be giving mass spoilers for Crooked House by Agatha Christie. So if you don't want to have any spoilers at all, please skip until the book is not in view anymore, as it will have spoilers, and I am very sorry. So this book is for the prompt of King Lear, which is to talk about an anti-hero or villain who's very complex, especially a female villain or anti-hero. And this one is Josephine. If you've read this, Josephine is quite crazy. If you haven't read it and you just don't want to read it at all, then here's the spoiler. Josephine is a 12-year-old girl who's in this house, and she basically kills her grandfather, one of the maids, all because she wants to just commit a murder and see what happens with the detectives. And she's so devious. Like, when I was reading this, I was thinking it has to be her, but it can't be her because she's a child. And I think that's the whole plot device of it. But I thought it was a really well done. She's very well crafted as a child, but also as a female character. She's definitely the villain, but she's also very complex and not one note. And I think it was one of Agatha Christie's, one of her genius moments. I feel like it wasn't always perfect in this book, but it was a very well crafted female character. So for the last prompt, it's The Taming of the Shrew, which is to talk about a polarizing opinion. So two books, one book that you loved, one book that you hated. And for me, I'm going with F. Scott Fitzgerald, and the book I loved was The Great Gatsby, and then the book I hated was Tender as the Night. I did not like Tender as the Night. I felt like it was simple, not really simple all the time, but unreasonable in the way people behaved. I didn't like it at all. And then on top of that, I felt cringy because it was based on F. Scott Fitzgerald and his life. And I was like, ugh, please tell me that's not how you decided and your choices went, because I did not like that. But then I also really loved The Great Gatsby, and I felt like it's so prophetic and so interesting and so in depth. It's definitely not a cast of people that are likable. It's not a happy story, but I really did enjoy it. So I love this one. Maybe not love. I really like this one, and I really, really didn't like Tender as the Night. So that is for F. Scott Fitzgerald. The last prompt is give me your hands if we be friends, so to tag others. So I am going to tag Sarah Hannett, since she is a Shakespeare massive fan, and then I'm also going to tag Megan Hannett, as she has acted in a bunch of Shakespeare plays herself. I hope that if you have not been tagged by this and you'd like to do it, please consider yourself tagged. I think Rainy Day Reads might enjoy doing this tag as well, but I'm not sure if you have already. So if you have, let me know and I'll go back and watch it. Otherwise, you are tagged as well. I will see you all next time. Have a great day. Bye.